Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Nernstorm and in this video I'm going to be showing you my Magicka Templar PvP build for the Greymoor patch. In the last couple of patches I have not created any Magplar builds because I felt like Magplar was in such a good place. I didn't have any challenge I wanted to theorycraft around, any issue to solve with the class. But with the recent nerf to healing, I feel like 1vxing on really any class outside of maybe Stamcrow and Magsork is fairly difficult, a lot more than last patch that is. And once again, I feel like I can create some really cool things by theory crafting around the Magplar, and so I decided to revisit the class, this time on the EU server, and boy, I am absolutely in love with the build I came up with. This build is super enjoyable. I decided to mix up two ideas I had in my mind, one for the Magplar build and one for a Vampire Lord build. Combined both of them together to one and it is absolutely incredible. You have great mobility with Mistform, allowing you to thin out Zergs as they chase you until you're able to turn around and start taking them down one by one. You have fantastic sustain, amazing damage mitigations and resistances, and when you're being overwhelmed by a large group chasing you down, you can always kite them into a small corridor or a choke point between rocks, use your vampire ultimate and just go nuts and start shredding them one by one or group by group. The raw damage of this build is insane and it can handle really any open world scenario, which is why it is so absolutely fun to play with. So finally, let's go over this build, starting up with the stats. Starting up with our max stats, you can see we have got 33k max Magicka on the back bar or 32k on the front bar, which is not a bad amount considering as our spell damage goes very high when we're buffed up. Our max health is currently at 31,500. However, this is due to us having Emperorship buff currently, increasing our max health by 2k. So usually that max health would be at 29.5k. And our max stamina is fairly close to 17k as well, which is not bad at all. Keep in mind, all three of these stats will get buffed by 10,000 once we use our Vampire Lord ultimate, making them very high, and while you are in the Vampire Lord form, making you super powerful. For our recoveries, we have got almost 1400 Magicka recovery, which is absolutely fantastic, but on top of these recoveries, we are also using Elemental Drain as well as Channel Focus, both of which give us extra Magicka on top of our base regeneration. And on top of that, we are using another set that helps us sustain as well, which we will get to in a moment when we discuss our sets. So our Magicka recovery is really good, and in the end of the day, I kind of feel like I cannot ever run out of Magicka, even if I'm trying very hard to spam my abilities, which oftentimes I actually do with this build. I never really fully run out. At worst, I just take a few seconds to regenerate myself, maybe one heavy attack or 2 seconds without casting an offensive ability, and that's it. My Magicka goes right back up and I can go offensive again. Our health recovery is at 800, which is actually fairly impressive considering as we are a vampire, meaning our health recovery is reduced. Since we're only at stage 1, our health recovery is only reduced by 10%, keeping us with 800 health recovery remaining, which is really great and will help us survive very well in open world fighting versus multiple enemies. And our stamina recovery at 500 isn't bad either, not incredible, but in all honesty, our stamina sustain with this build is really good still, which I will discuss once we get to our skills a little bit later. As for our spell damage, as you can see on the front bar, unbuffed, we have 2k spell damage. However, as I will display on the screen right about now, we can fully buff up while we are in combat and get to almost 4k spell damage, making our offensive stats already look very good. But on top of that, if you'll see here, we have 4.6k spell penetration, which together with Ellie Drain will bring us up to 10k spell penetration against our targets, which obviously is a very high amount of penetration for a heavy armor build, which is what we are using on this current setup. So 4k spell damage, 10k spell penetration. Our max Magicka currently at 33k, but jumps up to 43k when we are in our Vampire Lord form, and so very, very strong offensive stats already. And as for our spell critical being a little bit low, we are using Magicka Band of Brutality, which I will get to in just a moment with the sets, making our spell critical not very relevant, at least in the offensive sense of its usage. And so our offensive stats are very, very strong already with this build. But let's go over to our defensive stats and just buff up real quick, and you can see that when we are fully buffed, our spell resistance is at 31k and our physical resistance at 25k, as well as having a crit resist at 3200, making our resistances package really, really strong, as is to be expected with a Templar with heavy armor, making it so we are able to mitigate so much incoming damage just with our resistance. And obviously with our skills on top of that, we can reach really, really fantastic amount of mitigation and tank out a lot of incoming damage. And together with our healing power, we are able to survive really, really well in open world and eventually turn around, use our ultimate, and explode on some enemy groups chasing us. Next up, let's go and discuss the sets. So first of all, the most important piece of this entire setup is Magicka Band of Brutality. This entire build kind of revolves around the power that this mythic item grants you. It basically allows all your damage to deal 25% extra while you are unable to get any offensive critical strikes. So none of your damage abilities or sets can crit, however, all of them will have 25% extra damage done. Why that is so relevant is because that means that proc sets that can already not crit ever because of game mechanics are now able to deal 25% extra damage, which is why we are using 2 pieces of Grothdar on this build. Grothdar is a monster set that when you deal damage has a chance to create a pool of lava for 8 meters around you, which basically deals damage to all enemies inside of it. The uptime on it is nearly 50%, and it deals a really great amount of damage for an AoE proc, and obviously it deals 25% extra damage on top of what it states, just thanks to the Magicka Band of Brutality. This is also the reason we are using 5 pieces of Overwhelming on the front bar. This set basically allows you, when you use a class ability, to have a 33% chance to create a torrent of shock damage that deals damage to all enemies around you and gives you 15% of the damage done as Magicka right back to you. And due to Magicka Band of Brutality, this damage is increased, which makes the Magicka increase as well. And so Magicka allows you to gain more Magicka from Overwhelming, which allows you to cast more skills, which allows you to proc Overwhelming more reliably. And so the cycle just keeps going on and on and on, and Magicka kind of enables this set to jump right back into the meta and be really, really effective again. On the back bar, we are using 5 pieces of Clever Alchemist. This is obviously a fantastic set that gives you almost 700 spell damage for 20 seconds when you use a potion during combat. And it is just a fantastic set because it has 2 lines of health, helping you have a higher max health stat to be able to survive a little bit better in open world outnumbered scenarios, and it has an absolutely incredible spell damage bonus, which will obviously help you a lot when you're trying to burst down enemies. It is absolutely fantastic to combo together with the Vampire Lord ultimate as well, by the way. You can always go to the back bar, use your potion, turn into your Vampire Lord form, and then turn around and have both the extra stats from Vampire Lord as well as the extra spell damage from Clever Alchemist. Go back to the front bar and start tearing through your enemies. Absolutely fantastic combo that shreds entire groups, as you were able to see in the intro of this video, as well as in the end of the video footage, which you'll see later on as well. We are using 5 pieces of heavy and 2 pieces of light in this build. Magicka making us unable to crit anyways kind of takes away most of the drawback from heavy armor anyway, since our penetration is very high and our critical strikes are irrelevant. Basically, going with heavy armor barely has any drawbacks for us, and we mostly benefit from it through getting higher max health, higher resistances, and a lot of extra benefits you gain from the passives. And so we are using 5 heavy and 2 light on this build. As for our traits, we are using 2 pieces of sturdy to be able to block a little bit better on our back bar, which is obviously sword and board, and we are using the rest 5 pieces of impenetrable to help our crit resistance. As for our weapons, we are using a powered one-hander and a sturdy shield on the back bar, and we are using a sharpened weapon on the front bar, which I would, by the way, recommend to replace with a Nirnhound if you feel like you want a little bit better healing power, since sharpened only affects your outgoing damage output, but Nirnhound also affect your healing output as well as your damage you're dealing to enemies. And so if I had a little bit more transmute gems, I would actually redo this trait as well. As you can see on the back bar here, we're using lethal poison from the crown store. It's just a random poison you get from crown crates, but really you can use on the back bar anything. If you want to optimize this build, I would probably go with some ultimate generation poison on the back bar, and if not, you can just be fine with using an absorb magicka enchantment on your one-hander and you'll be absolutely fine. Now I'm going to go over every single one of the pieces I am using so you can see the exact trait and enchantment I'm using on every single one of them. And that's about it with the sets. And next up, let's go over and discuss the skills we are using with this build. Starting with the front bar, first of all, we've got Toppling Charge. This is probably the most overloaded skill in the entire game. It has so many different functionalities. It gap closes you to an enemy, deals damage to them, stuns them for 3 seconds, sets them off balance, and interrupts them if they were casting. So 5 different functionalities to the same skill, which is not even an expensive skill. By far the most overpowered gap closer in the game, recommended on every Magplar build and most Stamplar builds as well. Next, we've got Puncturing Sweep. It is just the bread and butter of Magplars. If you have a Magplar, you have probably used this skill before. It is as fantastic AoE spammable that hits for an 8 meters range, which is very important, and we'll get to that part a little bit later. It deals a decent amount of damage, and it snares the enemies so that the next ticks of damage from Puncturing Sweep will keep hitting the enemy on and on until the spam is over. And maybe the most important thing about the spammable is the fact that it heals you for about 50% of the damage done with this ability. So if you're hitting multiple targets and dealing quite a bit of damage with Puncturing Sweep, you are able to gain quite a bit of health back and take against pressure from your enemies and stay on the offense for quite a bit longer. So while on other classes sometimes you have to spam your enemy and then you take damage, you have to go back to your back bar and heal, on Magplar you're able to stay on the front bar quite a lot easier because Puncturing Sweep, while you deal damage, gives you health back. Next we have got Solar Barrage. It is a nice dot skill that lasts for 10 seconds and deal damage every 2 seconds to all enemies around you in an 8 meters range. Now here's the kicker about the 8 meters range thing. Both Grothdar and Overwhelming, the 2 proc sets we are using on this build, as well as Solar Barrage and Jabs are all hitting in an 8 meters range, which means all enemies around you that are included in this range, especially if they're in front of you and also take the damage from Puncturing Sweep, they all take so much pressure from both your proc sets, from Jabs and from Solar Barrage, all of which are obviously affected by Malakath Band of Brutality, which makes your burst completely AoE, very, very powerful, and helps you take on multiple enemies you're fighting at the same time. Really, really great for Zerg busting or for just 1v2 or 1v3s in general. Next, we have got Purifying Light. It is a fantastic burst skill. It is a little bit different from our entire AoE burst concept that we're using that I just mentioned, because it only applies to one target at a time. However, it is a very, very powerful skill to help you burst down an enemy target if they have good healing power or they're tanky, or perhaps just a good player that can mitigate your AoE damage or get away from it. This is just a fantastic skill that you place in the beginning of your rotation, and then let it explode in the end of it. You can apply Purifying Light and then go for your dots and jabs, and then toppling charge and CC the enemy right before Purifying Light goes off, and use your ultimate together with the Purifying Light explosion to try and deal the maximum amount of damage on your enemy. While the skill is less effective now that it can't crit, Malakath Banner Brutality affecting this skill guarantees your damage output from it is going to be quite significant. Next we have got Elemental Drain. It is also a fantastic single target skill which reduces the enemy resistances by 5.3k, effectively giving you slightly over 5k penetration against the target, and also applies minor Magicka Steal to the enemy, which gives you 300 Magicka per second and helps you sustain really well. The skill doesn't even cost anything to cast. It is just a fantastic skill to use, and I very much recommend using it. Next, our front bar ultimate, Crescent Sweep. It is a fantastic ultimate that deals quite a lot of damage all around you, once again in an 8 meters range, just like the rest of our pressure kit. It deals quite a bit of burst damage, and in addition puts a dot on all the targets in the area that ticks every 2 seconds for the next 6 seconds. The great thing about this ultimate is the fact that it is incredibly cheap. And unlike most of the other cheap ultimates in the game that have all gotten either cost increases or cast times on them, or maybe both for some ultimates, Crescent Sweep still remains without cast time and with very cheap cost. And while the main ultimate we use in this build is the backbar ultimate, Swarming Scion, we are able to use our Swarming Scion, and then after the ultimate is over, within a couple seconds generate enough ultimate to use Crescent Sweep again right after ult, because you gain so much ultimate, and this skill costs so very little that you can very easily be able to use this skill every few seconds again and again. Next to the back bar, we have got Extended Ritual. It is a skill that gives you so many great things. It is quite an expensive skill, however, it gives you a very large AoE range on the ground in which you have minor mending through your class passives. It heals you for as long as you stay within this AoE range. It gives allies the Purify synergy to cleanse themselves, and the main kicker is it removes 5 debuffs or dots from you every time you cast it, and you can even cast it multiple times to remove multiple negative effects on you. In this current meta, debuffs are super crucial. You have Major Defile going everywhere, have a lot of dots running around with the new build diversity that this patch has introduced, and it is absolutely incredibly important to be able to remove all these debuffs and dots from you. And while a lot of other classes are struggling with doing that, Templars have it easy with Purify Extended Ritual. You can just keep casting this skill whenever you need to cleanse yourself, and it is so very strong. Next up, we have got Living Dark. This skill is exactly what Templar needs to be able to go to the front bar. One of the major issues that Mag players have had throughout the history of ESO is being able to swap from the back bar to the front bar and being able to stay on it. What that means is a lot of times when you have a lot of enemies ganging up on you, doing a lot of pressure to you, you are being pushed into your back bar, spamming Honor the Dead or Breath of Life, trying to keep yourself alive, barely grasping to the last bit of HP you have left. And it is a big problem because if you don't have an effective mean to turn around and start attacking your enemies, you're just gonna constantly stay in this state of healing yourself, running around, trying to survive until eventually you get overwhelmed. And the Living Dark rework, which happened a few patches ago, has made this skill incredible and just what you needed on Templar. Between the minor mending and the healing that you get off of Extended Ritual and the healing you get from just casting jabs, the only thing you lacked is Living Dark, which gives you health when you get attacked, and you have a complete healing kit. When you go on the back bar, you heal yourself to full health with Honor the Dead, you cast Extended Ritual, your last skill cast on the back bar is Living Dark, and then you swap to the front bar and start jabbing away, and you are able for the 6 seconds that this buff persists to out-heal the pressure you are receiving, at least partially, very effectively. And that is exactly what makes this skill, despite the fact it is very expensive and only lasts 6 seconds, really relevant and really important to use on this build. Next up, we've got Honor Dead. It is a great heal spammable that you can use to either heal yourself or heal an ally. And if you're healing anyone who's below 75% health, you restore 60% of this ability cost over 6 seconds as well, which makes this skill quite affordable as well. That's the great thing about this skill. It basically is like coagulating blood for Dragonites, except it costs less, it heals more, it can heal another target, not only you, and you can get a refund for a part of the ability cost. It is exactly what Coag on steroids would be. Fantastic healing ability. In fact, a little bit overly powerful. Next up, we have got Elusive Mist. This is maybe the best reason to play as a vampire this patch, or any patch, in all honesty. It is a super strong mobility skill. It gives you a channel after the rework that happened in this patch. It is no longer a 4-second skill, it is now a toggle skill. And while you are toggled to this mode, you mitigate 75% of all incoming damage to you. That goes on top of your resistances as well. And you gain Major Expedition, which increases your movement speed by 30%. While you are in this form, you also can't be immobilized, rooted, slowed down, or CC'd at all. And you can stay in Elusive Mist as long as you want, so long that you have enough Magicka to keep it going, because it costs you 850 Magicka per second. Now, the main drawback of Elusive Mist is the fact that you cannot sustain Magicka while you're in the channel. And in theory, that's supposed to be the limiting factor of this skill. You're not able to stay in the form for too long because you'll run out of Magicka, because your Magicka recovery is disabled while you're in this form. However, while your Magicka recovery is disabled, your direct Magicka returns are still active, which means that Magicka you get from Channeled Focus, the Magicka you get from Elemental Drain, the Magicka you get from Overwhelming Surge, all of these are still happening while you are in Elusive Mist, and that gives you the ability to stay in Mist form for a much longer time than expected. In fact, now that we're playing here on a Breton, which is obviously helping you afford Elusive Mist a lot more due to the cost reduction of Magicka skills. In addition to Channel Focus, which gives you 240 Magicka every second, the effective cost of Elusive Mist per second, just as long as you keep one buff up, is basically around 600 Magicka per second. 600 Magicka per second is nothing. You can stay for such a long time in Mist form, and if you need to leave this form because you were just about to run out of Magicka, you just go behind some line of sight, leave Elusive Mist, rebuff yourself, give it a second or two, or maybe channel one heavy attack on an enemy to get your Magicka back, and you guaranteed are going to have quite a few seconds more in Elusive Mist to go for the next destination, find a better area to kite around, or turn back and attack your enemies. It is just a great mobility skill that gives you all that you need on this Magplar build. Next, we have Channeled Focus. This is, in addition to the Mag Regen skill that I was just referring to, is also your major source of Major Resolve, which is an super important buff that increases your spell and physical resistance by 5.3k. Really effective. And while you are inside the rune itself, it gives you even extra resistances. Just a fantastic skill. Really powerful. Gives you both sustain and tankiness, and obviously super important to use on any Magicka Templar build or Stamina Templar build, even if you take the other morph. And last, we have got the big punch of this entire build, the most iconic and fun skill to use, Swarming Scion. This skill, while it costs a whole lot, 300 ultimate is super expensive, it lasts for 20 seconds, during which you gain so many incredible effects. You have 10k max health, max Magicka, and max stamina more for these whole 20 seconds. You heal for 17% of all damage you deal. You can see enemies through walls. You have a bat swarm going around you for all 20 seconds and dealing 2k magic damage to every single enemy every single second of these 20 seconds. And obviously, you get 17% of that damage done as heal back to you. And on top of all of this, when you cast this ult, you go immediately to full health. So even if you are just about dead, you can smash this ultimate, go into your max health, and get 10k extra max health, making you very, very difficult to kill. So enemies are not going to be able to really take you down unless you have a massive Zerg of enemies chasing you, and even then, with the healing power you get from Swarming Scion, all of your Grothar Overwhelming, your Solar Barrage, and your jabs, all of these are healing you for quite a lot of the damage done. 17% of all damage done from all sources goes into your heals right away. Obviously affected by the 25% of the Malakath Band of Brutality as well, just making the healing you receive from this ultimate incredible, while it gives you such a great offensive potential as well. Great synergy as well here is between the 17% heal you get off of your damage with this ult and the jabs, which already gives you 50% of the damage done from this ability as heal, which together brings you up to around the 65% of the damage you deal with Puncturing Sweep while your Vampire Lord ultimate is up, returns to you as heals. Super strong synergy, allows you to fight versus multiple enemies and take on entire Zergs, as you've seen in the gameplay in the beginning of the video, and we'll see a bit more in the end as well. So that is about it with the skills. Now let's go and discuss a few more relevant pieces of information for things I'm using in this build. Starting up with the race, we are currently playing as a Breton just because the cost reduction for all your Magicka-based abilities is incredible. That, in addition to your recovery, your spell resistance, and your max Magicka, absolutely incredible passives that you really, really want to have on this build. If you want to play this build as something like a Dark Elf, High Elf, Argonian, even Nord, you can do all of these and it will work fairly well, but I really recommend Breton above all else due to the Magicka cost reduction of your abilities, making all your abilities super, super affordable and allows you to sustain really well with this current setup. We are also playing as a Vampire in this build. Quite obviously, we're only using Swarming Scion and Mistform from the Vamprism skill tree, and we're only using the Darkstalker passive because it is the only one that actually affects us somewhat. Most of these passives require you to be a much higher stage of Vamprism than I am. I choose to remain on Vampire stage 1 so that we don't get too much of a debuff from being a vampire. As you can see on stage 1 here, you get a health recovery penalty of 10% and you get a ability cost increase of 3%, which is not too bad. But if you go to stage 2 or 3 or 4, it starts getting incredibly annoying to afford Vamprism, and since we're not using most of these passives and not benefiting much of them anyways, I choose to remain on Vampire stage 1, which doesn't require any maintenance anymore because this patch, ZOS has made it so you stay on stage 1 for as long as you want, and you need to feed it to increase your stage rather than to decrease it like was in previous patches. For our food, we are using the Bewitched Sugar Skulls that gives us a tri-stat buff, max health, max Magicka, and max stamina, and on top of that, a little bit of health recovery, which, while 10% of it goes away, is still a nice little touch to get an extra off. For the potions, we are using two types of potions on this setup. We are using the Essence of Health, which is essentially just the tri-stat potions. We use that a lot while we're trying to survive and kite around because the stamina you regain from it is very, very important. But we also use, when we're going offensive, the Spell Power Potion, because we do not have any source of major sorcery on this build via our skills or sets. We need to use a potion for our major sorcery to fully buff our spell damage to 4k. So when you are just about to go super offensive with your Vampire ult on the back bar and start smacking that Zerg, usually what I would do is use the potion on the back bar to both get the major sorcery and the alchemist buff, then use my Vampire Lord ultimate, turn around and start slashing and hacking through the Zerg and trying to get all of them killed. The Mundus we are using on this build is the Ritual. It is not common to see this happening, but I feel like the healing power on Templar is pretty strong and is what makes it so very powerful. I feel like the Ritual gives us so much because it increases our healing done by 10%, and that affects not only our Honor the Dead heals and our heal over times, but also it affects the heals we get from our jabs, the marginal heals we get from things like Purifying Light, and more than all, affects the heal of our Swarming Scion, giving us a higher percentage of the damage dealt being returned to us as health, which allows us to stay offensive a lot more. While it looks like a very defensive option to use the ritual Mundus, it is helping you stay on the offense a lot more because you are getting healing from many sources while you are going offensive. And so this boon actually helps you go offensive a lot more than you would expect. Next up, for our champion points, we are going to go over to the PTS and display those there, since my EU account is still a little bit low on the champion points here. And that's about it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this build video and would like to use a similar build on your Magplars as well. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like it. If you would like to watch more of my content, please make sure to subscribe to my channel. I have recently, a couple weeks ago, started doing content creation full-time, mainly through my Twitch channel, but also with my YouTube. So I will try over the next few weeks to up my YouTube game and release a lot more videos, builds, and others on my YouTube channel. So please make sure to subscribe if you'd like to support the channel, and if you'd like to help me grow my channel and maybe be able to do this as a full-time job and sustain this in the months to come, then please make sure to follow me on Twitch. My link will be down below in the description. Also, feel free to join my Discord server. Link will be down as well. And more than anything, if you have any friends you think might enjoy my build videos or my content, please make sure to share my channel with them. I would really like your help to grow out my channel so that maybe I can be able to self-sustain with this and be able to do content creation full-time in the long term. Thank you guys so much for watching once again. I'm going to leave you here with a bunch of gameplay footage, and until the next video, have a good one.
Nope. Nope. Nope.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would